I'm here to show you how to make a granny stripe shawl, and this one is using lots of 4-ply or fingering weight yarn and a 3.5mm hook. Every single bit of yarn I've used is leftover stash, loads of different brands in here, so it's all different. Basically, whatever you have that's in your stash already, use that. My shawl has a really pretty and very easy scallop edging, and it's just really easy to work. When you've made a shawl that's the size you want it to be, you can just pop on a very simple edge like this. As you can see, I've changed colour every row, apart from I didn't bother here just because I thought it wasn't worth the extra couple of ends to sew in for the very beginning, and so I've done 2 rows at the beginning, and the rest are every single row I change colour. At the end, I'll talk a little bit more about specific yarns if you'd like, and then also cover different weights of yarns and things like that. So do watch to the end. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Let's get started. I'm going to move the shawl out of the way, bring in the yarn and zoom in a little bit. And I'm not really going to think about colour orders or anything like that. I'm just going to grab yarns as and when they come in my direction. And so to start a shawl, there's 2 different ways you can do it. Number 1 is just to make a slip knot on your hook, chain 4, and join with a slip stitch, and then you've created a little circle to work into, just like that. From there you can chain 4 and start working into that ring. I prefer using a magic circle, which looks a little bit like this. This is how I do my magic circles. So a lot of twiddling action to create an adjustable ring that you can pull closed. Hold the yarn here, wrap it around those 2 fingers so I have a cross, and then I go under the first one to pull through the second one, do a little bit of a twiddle action to go back under the second one. And that's a magic ring to work into. And the beauty of this is, although it's fiddly, you can pull it closed to finish and there's no little circle left at the end. Chain 4. That counts as 1 stitch and a chain stitch. The stitch I'm using throughout the pattern is a UK treble, or that's also known as a US double crochet, which is yarn over and pop into the circle, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and that's a USDC. Yarn over, 3 of those, yarn over into the circle, pull the yarn through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then chain 2. That's going to be our centre of the shawl, and then mirror the other side. So you want 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then a final stitch. I'm going to finish this stitch because I'm not going to change colour for this bit. But what I can do is pull the circle closed and it's gone. Next row starts with a chain 4. And then I'm going to work a cluster of 3 stitches in the first chain space. I don't chain 1 in between any clusters for the main pattern. just at both ends. This is the center, so chain 2, that's the other place where there's chains. So the center is a cluster, chain 2, a cluster, no chain next, and then we're going to finish in this last chain space with a trio of stitches plus a chain 1 and a final stitch. On the final stitch, I don't finish it. I cut the yarn because I'm going to change colour. This one is asking to join the party, so let's oblige. So all you do is the final yarn over in the new colour, and that's how you change colour the easy way. To start again, I'll show you again in a minute. So chain 4 and a trio of stitches, a cluster in the next space between clusters, we're in the center, so we're going to do 2 clusters divided by the 2 chains, separated by the 2 chains. Cluster in this space. And then already we're back to the end of the row. At this stage, each row or round works up extremely quickly. And you also don't need very much yarn for these early stages, which means you can use up some really teeny bits, really small scraps. I finished that last stitch, but we're going to change colour, so I'll undo it and do the whole thing again to show you how I change colour. So what I do is yarn over, insert the hook into the space, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2, and before I finish the stitch, the last yarn over and pull through is going to be with the new colour. And this tail is quite long, so I can just pull that a bit shorter. So I'm looking at lengths about that long to sew in at the end, and this beast of a shawl, I'm afraid, has a lot of ends to sew in if you're going to change colour every row. So that's 4 chains and then continue. So you might notice at this point every single row is going to be the same. You're working the clusters between the clusters of the previous row, and it builds 1 cluster per side per row. So it's really easy to keep count of where you are in the pattern. When it comes to changing colours, I like to be as random as possible. I do have blog posts about how you choose colour, so I'll link one below. There's a lot of fun in being random with a scrap project and not overthinking too much. But if there's a colour that you add and you truly don't like it, just take it out again. It's okay to undo, and fine. It gets a little painful when the rows are really, really long. But if you know you don't like that colour, then there's nothing wrong with pulling it out. However, it might look amazing next to the next colour you add. So it depends on your choice as to whether or not you're going to be very thoughtful about the colours you choose, or just go for it with the complete and utter randomness. One, two, three, four. So I'm going to make this for this little tiny swatch. This can be my last cluster round, and then it can be like just a little sample of the shawl to give you a really good idea about what it looks like, how you make it, and how easy it is. And then we'll move on to the edging. For this one, I'm just going to break the yarn here and fasten off by pulling through. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of granny stripes. For this scallop edging to work, you want an odd number of rows at this point, because otherwise it won't work, and you'll end up with a double crochet in the center rather than a scallop if it were an even number of rows. So you want an odd number of rows to make the scallops sit in the right place. So I'm going to put a little slip knot on my hook and attach it to this chain space, and chain 1. I'm going to work 1 UK DC, that's a US single crochet, a US SC there. In the next space between the clusters, I'm going to work 7 US DCs, that's 7 UK trebles. 1, 2, 3, 4, oops, try not to catch the yarn. Is that 5, 6, 6, 7. Single crochet in the next space between clusters, and then 7 in the next. Single crochet in the next space between clusters, and then in this center space I'm going to add 9, just to make it stand out a little bit and be a little bit different from the sides. And also it's got a corner to turn, so you want to add more stitches to make it look and sit right. I have no idea how many I've done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 2 more. 8, 9. SC in the next stitch, sorry, space. And then back to 7 for the sides. You may have noticed that when I did this, I didn't actually turn my work for the last row, sorry. That's because I've decided that this is my right side. Up until this point it didn't really matter because I was turning all the time. But for the edge I want everything to be quite pretty, and in order for that to happen I don't want to turn my work anymore. So an SC, a UK DC in the last stitch. Fasten off. We're going to rejoin the yarn here. Where are you, orange ball? Here you are. I'm going to work into the back loop only of these stitches, and we're going to do single crochets again. Let me join that. This is just one way of joining yarn. You don't have to join it this way if you don't want to. So a single crochet, back loop only, and if you want you can carry the yarn end so you don't have to sew it in later. And you work in the back loop only of every single stitch, and we're working single crochets in the tops of every single USDC. For the single crochet there, let's do a slip stitch. I'm just going to drop this, by the way, and then back to single crochets, back loop only again. So you do that all the way on the edge, and then when you get to the end you fasten off. That's the single crochet, so back loop only, slip stitch in that one. You can get to the end and it's one final slip stitch, and then you can fasten off. I would advise sewing in ends every few rows just to make it less painful, because otherwise there are a ton of ends to sew in. To make this kind of shawl and all of these different colours, and to have it so vibrant and cheerful, it does mean having the ends, unless you opt for colour changing yarn, of course. But I do like this as a stash buster. It's a really good way of using up all your yarn scraps. But you don't have to use 4-ply, or I call this 4-ply just by default, but to be honest with you, some of it's fingering weight, some of it's sock weight. Introduced a few more here. If you have a look at all of them, although they're slightly different from one another, I mean, there's not much in it when it comes to the thickness. You can see really that it doesn't matter too much. You don't have to stick to the same brand, and if anything, if you do, it becomes quite uniform and doesn't look as haphazard and stash bustery, I suppose. But the other thing to mention as well is that this does not have to be just 4-ply yarn that you use in your shawl. Double knit yarn makes a brilliant weight shawl, so you are jumping up to the next yarn weight with double knit, slightly more plump, in which case I would jump from a 3.5mm hook to a 4mm hook. And then if you wanted to make it in like a worsted weight, then again you would change your crochet hook to a hook that was slightly bigger to accommodate the thickness of the yarn. You might not want to work as many rows if you're going to work one of those thicker yarns, though, so bear that in mind. Just play around and see what happens. You end up with a crazy colourful shawl like this. I would say don't be afraid to just put random, strange, weird looking colour choices together. Those are the ones that come out best, in my opinion. And these tell a story, don't they, of all the different projects you've ever worked on. What a lovely way to use up treasured yarns. But I think that's it for now, so thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Thank you ever so much for watching. Bye.